We are back with an update about this epic garden failure.
We'll fill you in how this is doing at the beginning of August.
So today is August 3rd, and as you can see, things are growing here, but not really like we would like them to be. So we'll kind of get you caught up to speed if this is the first time that you're watching this video as far as finding out what's happening to have an epic garden failure. So you want to fill them in?
This garden space is about 200 feet long by 100 feet wide, and it is very alkali soil. We knew it coming in. We tested the soil and knew it had high pH. I sulfured it this spring to try to get ahead of that a little bit, which probably didn't have enough time. Planted tomatoes, 30 tomatoes, something like that. Planted 500 strawberries, planted 800 foot of potatoes, and everything looked like garbage.
Yep, this is 1,000 chilies and peppers right here that we're standing on this weed mat, and this is one of the only things that's hopefully going to be salvageable. We'll see. Also, when he says high pH, he means 8.6, so really high pH. And our last video was about the boron levels, and we want to thank you guys so much for all of your comments and all of your suggestions, because that really led us to realize that this isn't totally a boron problem. This is a high pH problem. We do think boron is playing a role, but we think if we help one, we'll really help the other one, and that they're connected. But they're connected more than we realize. So we want to thank you guys for your comments, a lot of suggestions, a lot of ideas, and we have some ideas about what we're planning now, but it's still a little bit up in the air. So one of the things we did talk about is getting our water tested. We have 2 water sources to try to fix this. In the last video, we talked about leaching that boron out of the soil. Our boron was 4.6 parts per million, and that is pretty high. You do want a little bit of boron in your soil, but not nearly that number. One of the remedies to getting our boron level a little bit lower is leaching it. So one thing we did, as I was saying, is test our water sources. So how did those tests come back?
The well water that we're using right now is 7.6 pH, and the boron levels were minuscule.
Yeah.
Also, the ditch water that we can pump out of was pH of 8, even 8, and the boron was slightly higher, but not anywhere near where it was here.
Yep.
A lot of the comments were from our last video were saying that we probably got this due to pumping alkali water onto our soil, and it's not likely the case. At least from agronomists and extension agents I talked to, they said that it's just naturally high pH soil here in our county, and so it's just the way it is. And we happen to know that the previous owners really didn't pump much water on this property. We also didn't want to pump the ditch water on. We were skeptical about pumping the ditch water on because, like we said, we have a bunch of commercial hayfields around, and they may be spraying herbicides on them and have runoff into that ditch water, and then we pump it up onto our garden field. We were hesitant about doing that.
Yep.
And so doing the well water would be preferable at this point.
So we are leaning towards well water, although it would be really nice to run our really big pump out here and really leach some of the soil, but that's probably out of the cards right now with that 8 for the pH coming out of the ditch.
Where we're at right now with this garden space is we have a few options. One option is trying to amend it via using elemental sulfur, or I've even thought of possibly trucking in some topsoil or something to try to get it to a more neutral state. And the other option is to abandon it altogether. And we have other parts of this property that have likely lower pH, lower boron levels. We had a test done down at where I'm growing corn right now, and it was better. So, and I think, it was 8.2, up here is 8.6, and those 4/10 of a pH percentage is significant. It's not incremental, it's exponential. So every tenth is a very big difference in what you're growing in.
But even at 8.2, we want to get it down a lot, because that's still really high, and it's going to make growing things harder. We didn't have this problem at our last house, and we could grow a lot of veggies over there.
From what I've been told from the local agronomist is just add elemental sulfur every year. And another local farmer that is very successful, he does it as well, and it'll do nothing but help. It won't fix your pH long term. That's why I'm tempted to abandon this, is because no matter how much you add, they say it'll just come back to where it was. And so it's kind of like, seems like it might be a losing battle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just always something to do, always money to pour into the field.
Mm-hmm.
As far as getting that elemental sulfur here, buying it.
Which some of the commenters said, learn what would grow there and just do that, which, makes a lot of sense to me. How we came upon this property and how we thought everything was going to grow great here. We didn't weed much of this, but I mean, look at all the stuff that's just growing, just blowing out of the ground with no water on it or anything.
Yeah.
In the foreground here, just
all that hayfield back behind us that has not been irrigated. So
and again,
yeah,
this is second cutting growth.
Yep, it's just growing, and it's just great. One of the takeaways from this is it's crazy how many weeds can grow in this high pH, but not the things we're trying to grow. So I guess that's just kind of an update of where we're at. Again, thank you for the comments. We'll give you a quick tour of what is growing and what we've just completely abandoned. Excuse all the weeds because we've kind of given up out here because it doesn't really make sense. Today is August 3rd, like I said, and you can see where our chili plants are at. They are green. They do look good. These also did get completely killed off by frost down to the stem, and they came back this much, which is amazing. But I don't know if we're going to even get any peppers or chilies or anything off of them.
Yeah, I honestly think if we grew peppers in this field and just didn't have that frost, we would probably, seems like we would be sitting good because these plants do look relatively healthy. Like they must just be tougher than most of the other plants.
Yeah, I still think though if they were in more preferable soil, they would have done really well.
No doubt.
Yeah, so we do need to get this fixed for whatever we grow. It might not be growing right in this particular plot, but it'll be growing somewhere.
Maybe we'll go dig a potato up and show you how tiny they are.
Yeah, they're tiny, tiny potatoes. So we'll give you a tour. We're starting on this end of the field. This is 400-foot rows of potatoes and just crowded out by weeds, but we've kind of given up with anything with them. But we are hoping to harvest them. Now, that being said, these are tiny potatoes right now still. So we're actually going to harvest a plant for you just to see what I'm talking about as far as how they're tiny potatoes. Now, we're used to growing potatoes like this, at least, and having a ton of them. So with 400 and 400 more feet, 800 feet of potatoes, we thought we'd have a ton of potatoes, but you'll see. So the tops look decent. They're not where they should be. I would say at our last house at this time of year, they would be bigger than this one, and they would be, that much further out. So we're going to pull a potato plant up for you right now just to let you see what we got going in here. I'm curious as well. We didn't pull many up. Okay, there's a tiny potato. There's another tiny potato.
What variety is this?
This one is, and it has a bowl hole. Yay. This one is Huckleberry Gold, I believe. Decent. Okay. Well, this one's okay, not that last one.
Best one you've dug.
Yeah. This is kind of the best plant we've dug, and the ground is really hard. There's a couple more. Okay, good. I was going to say, that can't be it. Okay, let's see. Not seeing any more. Going to the sides. Oh,
damn, that's pretty good.
The best one we've dug so far. Oh, got another one.
Huckleberry Gold's our winner. We're gonna have
Huckleberry Golds. Okay, but that plant looks pretty healthy. I'll have some potatoes to eat tomorrow night now. That is it, I'm gonna say. And keep going. I don't want to miss any. See, that hole's pretty well dug out. We've dug about 4 plants so far, and I would honestly say the best plant we've dug so far. Hopefully, these can get big enough so that we can have a good potato harvest this year, but right now we are worried. But that's something, and I'm happy to have it. We would come out here and pull all these weeds, but we don't want to waste our time for something that's not going to perform. Performing like this and having a month left or so, maybe we'll come pull those weeds, but it's a tough call when we have other garden things that we really need to do, and like a root cellar we're building and other stuff. So, it's a give and take, and it's a decision every day with which task we're going to get done, and that's why this has been low on the list right now. So this spot in front of me here, covered in weeds, a lot of alfalfa. This was where we planned on putting some strawberries. I'm going to set these down in a minute once we get back over there. Once they made runners. So I'll show you the strawberries now. And the strawberries are one thing we're walking away from. Complete failure. They were in here. You can see some of the plants in here. Like what? This is not, the strawberries are not loving the high pH. So I'm not weeding too carefully. They turned this color a while ago and we just completely stopped weeding because we realized we weren't going to get anything out of them. So we weren't going to spend any effort on this field. And that just goes to show what that high pH is doing.
But look how much vegetation growth we get, even though we have high poison soil.
Yep. Here's another example of the leaves and what they're doing right in here. Strawberry leaf, weeds, strawberry leaf. We are out in the field that we are maintaining this one. We've come through and weeded a couple times inside these pods because we're really hoping we can get something. So this one right here I know is a jalapeno plant, and you can see it barely just has flowers going on it. I don't see any jalapenos on this particular plant. You probably are wondering, why are they so bushy? They are so bushy because when they all froze off, we essentially topped every single one of them to get all of that dead growth off there, and then they just pushed out. So that's why they look as strange as they do this year. It's because of that frost and how they kind of bounced back from that. So about the weed mat. The weed mat has kind of been a love and a hate relationship. At the beginning of the year, I was despising this weed mat because we would get huge winds coming through and the weed mat would shift and move and it was driving us nuts. And it was also shrinking quite a bit. That was really frustrating because the holes, so it's a 100-foot run on each run, and the holes would kind of move and start to cover these little tiny pepper plants. When we got that frost, it kind of saved some of the plants because they were actually under the weed mat, but then we had to burn the holes bigger. It just ended up being a really annoying thing with the weed mat. But now I am loving the weed mat because you can see just how many weeds we can grow. And this has been a savior as far as giving this a chance to hopefully make something, because like I said earlier about the potatoes, we're not going to spend a ton of time and coming out here and weeding this and dealing with this, being we don't even really have peppers, chilies growing yet, and we don't want to just put a bunch of energy into it and then get a frost and, well, we weeded all that for nothing. So now I'm liking the weed mat. Earlier I didn't like it. Another thing I am not really loving about the weed mat is it doesn't seem like it's going to last a long time. Just walking on it sometimes, you can easily put a hole in it like this. You put your knee in it sometimes to, yeah, there, I just did it. See? I just put a hole right there. This weed mat is from Boron. I maybe should have went with a different weed mat if we wanted to reuse it. But for this season, it's going to work. Next year, I'm planning to repurpose it already for just like ground covering to kind of clear out a garden space or something like that. Just, I know it already has holes, obviously, so we would put them over each other and stagger those holes so that everything would be covered. Some application like that where we don't care if we have a couple holes or tears here or there. Another thing that was kind of annoying, which is probably kind of obvious to people, was you have to go down and weed every single pod all the time to get all the weeds out of every single pod. And we did not really foresee that being so demanding, and it was very demanding. And that has been something else that's been frustrating. Here we are at our next abandoned mess. This is a tomato garden, or it was a tomato garden.
Here's a picture back on June 10th just for reference. This is right after we planted, when we started noticing the yellowing happening on the tomatoes. And this is by June 20th after we got that really devastating frost.
Now we've just kind of let it go. As you can clearly see, no weeding has been done. These tomatoes were one of the first things that gave us a clue that the soil here was not good, as we talked about in our last video. And they yellowed, shriveled, and completely died back. And then we got frost, and they died back all the way. So you can see, like, just this is a good example of kind of the types of things we started to see when we saw the boron. I mean, this is an extreme example. That is not going to grow any tomatoes. Now, some of them have completely bounced back, and they look like a tomato plant that could potentially make some tomatoes if we had a long enough season. And in Montana, we do not have a long enough season for this or that next one or that one or that one to do anything. But we are still watering this so that hopefully we can just see what it does. That's all I'm doing with it now is it's a curiosity thing to see what's going to happen. So really interesting though that it's putting on, like there's flowers on this one. A lot of them. Look, baby tomatoes. This is probably a cherry row.
Yeah.
We'll look at the map, but
Little tiny tomatoes.
yeah, nowhere near where we're going to actually be able to harvest anything. So this has been abandoned, and it's kind of just, you know, an experiment at this point to see what we can possibly grow in this soil at this point. If you watched our planting video, you probably saw me put the dried beans that we were going to just grow to have dried beans in the pantry in these 4 rows right here. This has also been another abandoned thing because look at these bean plants. They are yellow and they are not growing at nearly the rate they should be. They are growing, but they just don't look great. Some do have flowers, but they're not that many. So we did abandon this. Now, if they end up pulling through and producing bean pods and they can dry, we will come harvest them, even though this is a mess. But another abandoned project right here. Due to the soil. Over here, we have our 4 other 100-foot rows of potatoes, and you can see we've weeded a little bit, so it's a little bit better over here as far as not being just a mess of a jungle. But we're hoping to get something out of these. I mean, you saw the potatoes on the other side. The plants over here honestly look a little bit worse, so we know the pH and the boron and all that is, you know, not the same throughout everything. It's kind of changing in fluid. So we'll see what we get out of this. And over on the far side, we had our winter squash and all of that sort of stuff vining off. We did end up pulling a bunch of that and putting it in our other garden when we noticed we had all these problems. And then it froze, and then a bunch of those died. Some of them are still growing in here, which is kind of amazing. But they are nowhere near the size to do anything. That one right there has a couple flowers on it even. So we're just kind of leaving them. We are still watering these, but they're kind of an experiment. Also, we had to water them in order to water the potatoes, so that's why they're still being watered as well. But yeah, you might notice too, we stuck a couple extra tomatoes in here that did not get frosted from the greenhouse after that frost as an experiment to see what will they do. Can they grow there? And these do not look great. The leaves are kind of curled in. The color's okay, but they are nowhere near the size they should be to produce fruit in the amount of time we have left. And it's not like we started anything different with when we started our starts and all of that. I mean, that's all the same. The only thing that's different is the soil we're planting them in. So cornfield is down over there. It is also, I would say, behind what we typically get. It had a cold spring, but the soil just isn't quite what it should be. The one on the far right was our first planting. There's 4 plantings back there, about a week apart. And how's it doing back there, John?
Just barely tasseling the
Okay.
first planting.
Okay, so that's way late for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we have to work on the soil. Anyways, thanks so much for watching this update, and we really do thank you for your comments on the last video to give us some ideas and kind of get our brains wrapped around the situation so that we can figure out what we need to do next. And we appreciate your comments. If you have been following our journey, thanks so much. If you are new here, thanks for checking out this one, and please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching.